Good evening. Thank you so much for coming and spending time with us. I know there are so many things that you could be doing this evening and so many things on the to-do list for you here at the holidays, but thank you for taking this time to come and be with us. We are very excited about the progress that we have made with our strategic planning. Please understand that this is just where we are. And so for 2016, we're going to kind of close it out right here, but we're very cognizant of the fact that we are not finished. We realize that there is more work to do, and we're committed to get that work done. But I'm so delighted that we have defined 7 committees, and we've articulated our charges to those committees, that we have people who are coming to the table for each of those committees, and that they're engaging with us and offering us good conversation, good exchange of information. So please, as you look at this tonight, you may see things that you think, wow, that needs to be defined more. I don't exactly understand that. And tonight is really not the night for us to pass the microphone around the auditorium, but it's just an opportunity for us to tell you where we are, what our conversations have been about, what our belief statements look like, and sort of our goals going forward. So as I think about the whole process of strategic planning, eventually what we will do, hopefully in the spring, we'll take to our board a strategic plan that should give us some direction for at least the next 3 years, I would suggest. If you think about sort of a template for a strategic plan, based on the conversations that we've had in our committees, again, we've talked about what do we believe, and so you'll see some of that tonight. What do we believe? And from those belief statements, we've been able to generate what should our goals and objectives be based on those beliefs. So you'll see some goals defined for you. I won't suggest that all the goals are already there, but certainly a great starting place with goals. What you will not necessarily see tonight is how are you going to get to that goal? What are the activities that's going to take us there? What's all in the weeds that will help us get to that goal? So we realize that what you'll see tonight is sort of broad, global, snapshot. And yes, we have a lot more of getting into the weeds and talking about the activities and the actionable items that will help us achieve those particular goals. What you'll also not see tonight that will be in a final plan that we'll present to our board is a timeline. When will we get this done? Some of those goals might happen in shorter order than other goals. Some of those goals may literally take us 3 years to get there. For example of that might be achieving unitary status for our school district. That's not going to happen in January, even though in January we'll be going back to the court and sharing some additional information with Judge Heikkila. We will not get unitary status in January. We certainly hope that we will move from a preliminarily approved plan for rezoning our school district, which is one green factor, but we do know that we'll not achieve unitary status and that there are more steps to take, more conversations to have, more goals to meet. And so that's an example of, hey, it may be 3 years for some of our goals. Others may happen much more quickly than that. And then the other thing that I think is important that we share with our board and share with you as our public is, how much is that going to cost? We've had lots of conversations about budgets. We've had lots of very transparent conversations about our budget, thanks to Tina Hancock, our CSFO, who provided us a great conversation about our budget for this fiscal year 17. So there will be a column in our strategic plan that talks to us about what we project, best guess, the cost of that particular goal to be. So in your mind's eye, if you'll just think with me a minute, there will be goals in this strategic plan. There will be actionable items and activities that will help us accomplish those goals. We will clearly define as close as we can some timelines for the achievement of those goals, and then we'll be very clear in terms of articulating what we believe would be the cost associated with the achievement of those goals. So with that said, I have just a quick snapshot And then we're going to have 7 committees share with you. Please don't panic thinking 7. We've asked each of them to keep their comments to about a 7-minute presentation so that this can roll rather quickly. But each of those 7 committees will share with you their work. But if I might share just a couple of things first with you, the 7 committees are parent community engagement. The second committee is finance and budget. The third is personnel. The fourth is strategic planning. Fifth, student growth, development, and achievement. Sixth is technology, and 7th is unitary status. Not in any order of importance, those are our 7 subcommittees. I want to just remind you that as you think about those 7 subcommittees, they're very akin to and certainly aligned with what we know to be the green factors for unitary status. Student achievement. Dr. Dotson's team has been looking at student development and student achievement, and so the student assignment piece will fall in some measure there. Faculty assignment and staff assignment. Mary Ville's committee has been working with personnel, so she's being very mindful about these green factors specific to unitary status. Transportation is certainly a financial obligation and responsibility that we have, and I believe our transportation folks have been at the table with the finance group. Extracurricular, again, is our student development and achievement, and then facilities, they have also been sitting at the table with the committee on finance. So the green factors and our committees are very aligned to each other. As we were working through this process, we knew we needed to hear more the voice of our community. We created a survey, and we pushed that survey out. I wish that I could tell you we had 14,000 folks who responded to the survey, but we are delighted for 3,121 folks who took their time and gave the energy to respond to the survey. The survey was opened between September 29 and October 28. We sent it out to employees, parents, and community. We distributed it via our school messenger, social media, and also traditional media was used to send that out. So who took the survey? We think it's important to say to you that we own this. We own the fact that we didn't have the level of diversity in the responders that we wanted to have. And so just so you know what we know, 84% of the folks of that 3,121 were actually our Hoover parents. 75% of those who responded were young folks. That's young to me now, 30 to 39 years old. 73% were female, 73% were white, 12% were black, and 6% offered no selection. That's a little troubling because it says that we didn't get all the voice of all the people. We didn't get a terrific representation across our school district. And so we learned a lot from this, and that is maybe there are other ways we need to push this out. Maybe we need to get out in communities and hand it out. So we have learned some things, but we have taken advantage of the feedback that we have received. And so our very first group is strategic planning. I'm going to ask that each of those that are presenting just comes up and shares with us who you are and tells us about your work. And there is a clock up there that'll time you down. The floor doesn't drop out if you go over, but if you're just kind of timing yourself, you'll see a 7-minute countdown clock. So if I could have strategic planning and have you come up and introduce yourself, and thank you so much for all of you who've served us.
Thanks. Do you mind if I put this here? So, I'm on the clock. My name is Bill Simpson. I have two parents. I have 2 children in the Hoover City school system. One's in 10th grade at Hoover High School, and the other's in 7th grade at Simmons Middle School. If you could flip to our committee members. There we go. I'm not going to run through the names of the committee members. What I would say is we had a pretty wide variety of experiences and backgrounds on the committee. We had 4 members who currently work for Hoover City Schools, Dr. Murphy and Dr. Simmons, but also a faculty member of one of the elementary schools and one of our middle school principals as well, and a pretty wide variety from an industry standpoint of parent representatives, nonprofit, higher ed, small business owner, healthcare, and financial services. Go ahead and flip to the next slide. So on all these committee slides, you're going to see this header that says repeating conversations. What that basically means is these were the key items that each of the committees discussed. And in our case, we looked at the current strategic planning framework. We also looked at the current mission, vision, and motto in terms of how it fit within the strategic planning framework, as well as our own committee's opinion of those. The third item you'll see there, we had a pretty robust discussion at one of our meetings on the strengths we felt of Hoover City Schools, as well as Dr. Murphy's words, areas of focus, maybe said differently, opportunities for improvement we saw within the system. We also looked at some other school systems, vision and mission. We looked at some locally, ones you would probably expect we would look at, Mountain Brook, Vestavia Hills, Homewood. But we also looked at some rather large systems outside of the state. Fairfax County, Virginia, Montgomery County, Maryland, Gwinnett County, Georgia. They all three were the largest systems within their states. They had between 155,000 and 185,000 students. Now, while that is a lot larger than the Hoover system, they are faced with a lot of the same challenges that the Hoover system's faced with. Growing student populations and very diverse student bodies in terms of ethnicity and income levels. So a lot of the same challenges. We felt like that might give us some guidance and insight on it. The other piece, too, worth noting, is a lot of our schools in the system have their own vision statement or mission statement and belief statements. We looked at those as well. And then last, we worked on crafting our part of the survey questions and also reviewing the results. So if you'll flip to the next slide, you can see I think every committee has like 3 highlights from the survey. If I had to talk about this, I think the highlights are that based on those who responded, overwhelmingly were in favor with what the current vision, mission, and mottos were. The results were 84% or higher favorability. There was an opportunity to make comments within that, though, around what you thought about it or other feedback. And one of the things we noticed in looking at the comments was there were some common themes that align well with what we talked about during our committee meetings. From the vision statement standpoint, one was that, geez, I wish the statement was maybe a little more forward-looking in terms of what the system's trying to accomplish. I think from the mission standpoint, maybe leadership could be something that gets added to that. And then from the motto standpoint, there were comments around, what do you really use the motto for? Do you even really need a motto? Which, again, kind of lined up with our committee. So if you go to the last slide, these are basically our recommendations based on all those items I talked about we discussed in reviewing our survey results. From the vision statement, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but the one highlight I would make is where we say Hoover City Schools will be a premier educational institution. I think that's the key add to that in terms of a target that we try to shoot for and leads a lot of our decisions from there. We also changed, instead of, I think, changing world at the end, we talked about it being a more global society there. Dr. Murphy, one thing I noticed maybe for one of our follow-up meetings is we used the word will like 3 times in that. We could probably clean up that statement and continue to work on it. The mission statement is basically the same as it was. We added that word leadership that I think is highlighted in a different color on the slide. And then on the motto part, rather than making a recommendation, our recommendation was that we get some feedback from the schools. So we're in process of doing that, and their target to provide that is the end of the week. So with that, I think the next committee is parent and community engagement.
Good evening. So with parent and community engagement, I'm supposed to introduce myself. So my name is Samantha Elliott Briggs. I am both a parent of a Hoover High graduate and a parent of an 8th grader at Bumpus Middle School. And I am an educator. I work in higher education as well as nonprofit education. And parent community engagement committee members included our representatives from Hoover City Schools. We have Jason Gaston and a counselor, Patty Tanner, myself, Samantha Briggs, Jan Robinson, Aaron Colball, Dustin Chandler, Janet Turner, Jeff Singer, Summer Donnelly, Mike Fowler, and Greg White. And look, we have slides up there too, cool. So we also had repeating conversations, which included reaching all stakeholder groups. For us, as we talked about stakeholders, we included obviously the school board personnel, school administrators, teachers, parents, community members. We talked a lot about which community members we're reaching out to, not just residents who have students within the school system themselves, but also families that might have children that have graduated out of the school system, as well as families that don't have children, but they're obviously impacted by our schools because their tax dollars are feeding into our schools, as well as local business owners and businesses. So those were the different people that we talked about when we talked about stakeholders. Other repeating conversations included improving communication vehicles, so the website, texting, Remind Me. A lot of schools have different, little things that they use. I know at the high school, one thing we used to always talk about is all the different communication avenues that each individual teacher had to reach out to the students as well as to the parents. Standardized communication practices. Again, going back to the high school, I see some of my daughter's old teachers in the audience, and I know that's one thing I used to say to them all the time, that sometimes it gets a little confusing when you have to figure out which avenue to look at in terms of getting information, and so we talked about standardizing that, as well as fostering welcoming environments. As we talk about the growing diversity in Hoover City Schools, we really have a need to make sure that everyone feels welcome, that everyone feels like they can come to PTA meetings, that everyone can come out and participate in whatever's going on at the school. We don't want any parent to feel as though it's not a space where they can participate. Our survey results, our questions centered around parent engagement, community engagement. 43% of the respondents said that they get their information mostly from schools. 41% get their news mostly from schools as well as the system. So that might come from system-wide email blasts. It might come from the Hoover City Schools text messages or from the phone messenger system. And 54% receive their communication solely via mobile. In this process, we realized that there's some things that we need to pay attention to. For one, I was on the committee, but I realized I wasn't getting any news and information, and it turned out that there was one day when my email account, my UAB email account, was over flooded, and I hadn't quite cleaned it up very well, and so emails were bouncing back and getting rejected. Well, it turns out that kind of booted me out of the system, and I wasn't getting any mail. And so luckily I was, participating on the committee, and so we were able to rectify that like within 5 minutes, and then I just started getting a flood, of really good information that I had been missing. So we kind of talked about ways in which we can make sure that we're not missing anyone, that everyone is getting the news. Updating telephone numbers, updating email addresses, updating home addresses, that's definitely a work in progress to try to find systems to ensure everyone is getting what they need. Our belief statements that we chose to focus on, we believe that all voices should be heard because all voices matter, regardless of color, class, creed, ability, or any other factor. We believe Hoover has the absolute best parents and stakeholders around, and that all should have a chance to be heard. And we believe every responsible effort should be made from the district and school levels to engage our students, employees, parents, and community members. And then finally, our recommendations, enhance and build upon existing efforts to engage all stakeholders. So we feel as though, there are a lot of good things that are going on. We don't want to deny the fact that we're doing good work, But we also want to acknowledge the fact that we're not getting everyone to the table that we can. You know, I mean, if we look around this huge sanctuary right now, this audience looks very, very different than, you know, some of the audiences that the school board has hosted in the past. So what can we do to make sure everyone knows that we're here tonight, and to make sure that they feel welcome to come and join the conversation? We explored concepts of a parent alumni council. So that is, you know, I will graduate out of this system, you know, in 4.5 years. Do I just walk away and stay at home and never come back out and participate? Or is there a space for me too? You know, my children are now out of the house, but I'm here, my tax dollars are here. Do I still have a voice? So we talked about developing a parent alumni council for those parents whose children may have aged out of the system, as well as a retired educator council, because we have a lot of really good resources in our educators that have since retired. And we don't want, you know, them to keep their ideas and some of the lessons learned, you know, as you all may transition from one role in life to another. You know, you might think of some woulda, coulda, shouldas, and we want those woulda, coulda, shouldas, you know, to come to the table and help be constructive and creative, and help us explore ways that we can continue to grow as a community and as a system. And then finally, audit all communication vehicles in an effort to enhance, overhaul, or replace. And so that just kind of goes back to all the different communication mechanisms that I've already discussed, and ways in which we can utilize those and improve upon them, and maybe even discover some things out there that we haven't yet taken into consideration. So that is all from our wonderful little committee, Parent Community Engagement. And now we have another wonderful, fabulous group that's going to come up and talk, and I don't know who they are. Finance and Budget. There we go.
Well, good evening. I'm honored to represent the Finance and Budget Subcommittee, and you'll see a listing of our folks that were involved. It's pretty extensive. The takeaway from this is that we had a really good broad-based group, both with district staff, everything from the classroom to the central office, and we had a number of educators at all levels, everything from an elementary teacher to a retired high school teacher to people at the college level. We had local business owners and a lot of good perspectives to bring to bear on this. The repeating conversations that we had, the first is, how did we get here? And that was, you know, a little bit of what did we get ourselves into by volunteering to be on this committee. But then also, as we look forward, we felt like it was important to understand how we had gotten to where we are presently. And I will tell you that school finance is complicated and much deeper than we can get tonight. But the areas that we looked at, in addition to that, were capital plan, energy conservation, preventative maintenance, facilities use. And that's a really wide net to be casting. But some encouraging things that we found as we dug into each of these areas is that the district really has sort of picked the low-hanging fruit and been very responsible with the use of resources. So investments have been made in saving energy and reducing the operating cost that we have. Where possible, certain maintenance items have been deferred, and I'll speak more to that in a moment. We've looked at facility use fees to make sure we're at least covering the cost of keeping the lights on and the air conditioners running when we have different groups use these community facilities that are called schools. And a really significant thing that is on our radar screen that needs to be on the entire community's radar screen is the upcoming capital renewal cycle. When Hoover formed its school system and was seeing explosive growth, it seemed like every year or two we were opening a new school. And that building boom was about 15 to 20 years ago. What's important to realize is that there are things like roofs, which last 15 to 20 years. HVAC equipment, which lasts 15 to 20 years. So there's significant cost that we've got coming up to properly maintain and protect the resource that we have in all of these wonderful schools that our district is responsible for. The next repeating conversation dealt a lot with debt and revenue, and this is something that we could spend a lot of time talking about. But again, there's good news and there's bad news, and again, it's complicated. There's a lot of positive things. We mentioned at the beginning the school finance presentation that was made back in July. That was one of the very first things that our subcommittee looked at and helped to craft that message. And I think the visibility of that and the approach to presenting school finance information is very important and very strong. We also ended fiscal year 16 in the black, which is the first time in quite a few years the school district has been able to do that. And that's something that we need to celebrate, but we also need to recognize what is on the horizon financially for our school district. Over the last number of years, we have gotten lean, and that's a very positive thing, but our committee wants to state unequivocally that additional revenue is needed for this school system. The cuts that have been made are painful, but if we were to make further cuts, it's really going to jeopardize the values that our community holds, and you'll see that reflected in our presentation and some of the others. But student-teacher ratios, quality facilities, attracting quality teachers and keeping them are all things that are very important to this community that voted years ago to start its own system based on those kinds of community-held values. Some of this, in terms of getting lean, is like deferring an oil change on your car. You can put that off, you can even skip it if times are really tough, but eventually if you don't do it, you're going to be buying a new engine. So with that in mind, some of these upcoming expenses are very important for us to be mindful of and planning for financially. Did I mention school construction and school finance and operating costs are complicated? Understanding the importance of how the school district manages its debt and manages its fund balance is something that we spent a lot of time talking about. It's important to understand that the district is not just sitting on a large pile of money. That money is spoken for. We've got $26.7 million worth of principal payments coming up over the next 10 years or so. The first one is in 2018, and it's about to be 2017. So we need to be mindful of that. On the positive side, based on some of the recommendations of district staff as well as this committee, we've put some of that money to work. So it has been invested, and we're now making, instead of 0.1%, maybe as much as 1% on some of that money. And we've also, the board authorized in the last month's meeting to look at some principal debt reduction that's producing some interest savings. But it is vital on March 7th that we as a community come out and support our schools and vote to renew the existing school tax levies that are in place. That's vital to being able to manage the debt of the school system and to provide for the needs of our children. The last thing that we talked about in detail were supplements, and the present system is pretty difficult to comprehend. And I will state before anybody picks up their phone, our intent is not to suggest that supplements be cut or reduced. There's a recognition on the part of our committee of the value of experience, but we do need to make some changes to that system that we'll talk about in the recommendations. Looking at the survey results, I think these are very well viewed in context. The first was an agree with statement. And 47% believe that Hoover City Schools should have been more aggressive over the years in finding new income and cutting expenses. I think that survey result reflects a balanced view of it, that we need to keep working the way we have been working. 43% said that we had been managing our money wisely, and only 11% felt like we had not been good stewards of it. The second one was a rank of importance type question, and 60% believe Hoover City Schools' priority should be to find a balance between expenditures and revenues, and I think balance is the key there. 36% people said just focus on new revenues, and only 4% said just focus on cutting expenses, so a balanced approach is clearly recommended. And the last one is sort of a check any that apply in terms of the concerns that you may have, and 63% agree that revenue streams, from local, state, and federal sources have been strained. That's an awareness of the challenge that our community has, but a very close second at 62% was an acknowledgement of the growth of enrollment that we're dealing with. The belief statement should be obvious to most folks that we need to be good custodians, good stewards of the funds that are available to us, and the point here is to prioritize spending money on the central mission of the school district, which is educating our children. The recommendations, some of these have been implemented, some of them are already underway. Related to the salary supplements, we need to clarify and simplify that process. Again, we felt like there's an acknowledgement of the value of experience related to that. So we're recommending that we use a model similar to the STEP model that's used for salaries, that's well established and acknowledges the value of that experience. But then also we need to clarify job descriptions for these supplements so that folks can be held accountable to the results that they're being paid for in those. And then lastly, and very, very importantly, is that we feel it's important to collaborate with city leaders and share resources to work as partners for student success, because we're all in this together. We are all Hoover. We're encouraged that school support, financial support for the school system was such a significant plank in many of the successful mayoral and council races recently, and we want to continue that conversation. I think school funding has been more of a part of the community's conversation here lately than it has been since we voted to form our own school district. And we're encouraged by that and want to continue. I think as Hoover has gone through its growth, we have seen the pendulum swing back and forth with different needs and different priorities. But as we mature as a community, we're hoping that we can find a balanced approach where everybody is looking to spend money wisely, to make an investment in our community, and certainly in the schools, because there are definitely needs coming. Last thing I would say was get out and vote March 7th. It's a renewal. It's not a new tax. It's very important to the future of our school system financially that those taxes be renewed. Thank you.
Good evening, and I'm here to provide feedback from the Personnel Committee. I want to thank Mary Veal for being our committee chair and for her leadership on the committee. I'm Patsy Gwynn, and I'm a teacher, and I'm a community member of Hoover City Schools. The repeating conversation is that diversity is valued amongst the community with involvement, the need for small class size, as well as professional development for our staff. Hiring and retaining strategies is important to our district, and we are a district that would like to obtain unitary status through staffing assignments. We feel it's necessary to analyze salaries, supplements, and benefits, especially to increase in the cost of insurance and retirement compensation packages. Establishing a strong mentoring program is important to provide support and retention of staff. And it is important to analyze recruitment, retention, data for minorities. The survey results showed that 75% believed we should focus on recruiting and retention to attract strong applicants. 70% of Hoover City Schools should analyze and provide adequate staffing for all campus and work locations. And the following were ranked in the survey in order of importance: student-teacher ratios, community student safety, academy programs, and then extracurricular opportunities. The belief statements were that it is important for the district to be transparent with its relationships and communication to build a stronger school climate and a stronger sense of our community. It's also important for students and employees to have mutual respect and model ethical behavior. The recommendations from the committee were to recruit and retain quality employees while maintaining competitive salaries and benefit packages to attract the best applicants possible. The diversity of the staff, which can focus on minority recruitment and retention of staff to obtain a unitary status. Adequate staffing is important in all, areas to provide a quality education to students while maintaining small class sizes. It's also important to maintain a safe and secure environment. And then last, to improve our mentoring programs to help new teachers and administrators. And I think it's perfect. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Stephen Chu. I am a professor of psychology at Samford University. I am representing the Student Growth Development and Achievement Committee. Here is the personnel of the committee. We were led by Ron Dotson. I give him a lot of credit for leading us and keeping us on task. And we had a really congenial group, a very diverse group, but the conversations were very interesting and very constructive. I also want to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Murphy for allowing the parents to take part in this activity. I've learned a lot. The more I learn about the way the school district is run, the more impressed I am by the professionalism of the administration we have. So I really appreciate the opportunity to learn more. We'll move on to the repeating conversations. Here are the things that we talked about, and you're going to hear a lot of the similar statements from the previous speakers, because student achievement is what the whole district is geared towards. We pick the best personnel, we provide them with financial resources, and the end product is our students who are achieving and learning. So many of the same things that other committees talked about, we also talked about. We value our teachers and our principals. They are both caring, they are devoted to our student success, and they are professional. So they do their job to the best to their abilities, and they are always seeking to develop and become more effective in their profession as being teachers. Okay. We also notice the importance of attention to student needs. Our students are getting more and more diverse. We've heard this before in one of the previous speakers. The students are representing a greater and greater variety of ethnic backgrounds, also in socioeconomic backgrounds, and we have to take that diversity and make it a strength, that our students are familiar with people from many different cultural backgrounds, and they don't take for granted that all people have the same advantages and the same prior knowledge. A lot of our students are coming into the district having been educated elsewhere, and so that increases the diversity of prior training that we see in their classes. So we have to cope with that, and we have to make sure that everyone can succeed. Then finally, the curriculum. In general, people are very satisfied with the overall rigor of the curriculum, but the curriculum is always a work in progress. We're always trying to find ways to improve both the curricular choices and the rigor of the curriculum, and also the extracurricular choices, the opportunities that students have to learn outside of classes. So then we have the things we're concerned about, the changing nature and increased intensity of student needs. So we're dealing more with family dysfunction, students who are dealing with more and more issues outside of the classroom that influence their performance inside the classroom. So our teachers have to deal with that, and our administrators have to deal with that. I already talked about the diversity and the range of levels of preparation that students come into the district with. And oftentimes they're only here for maybe 2 or 3 years. They're more transient in nature, so we need to make sure we have the greatest impact we can during the time they're here. One of our concerns is resources like libraries and field trips. These were cut back a great deal in the budget after the recession in 2008, and only now are we beginning to catch up with the resources, especially for libraries. And so we need to upgrade and make sure that our library resources are up to date. Also, we're starting with programs, partnership programs and career training for skilled trades. This is an exciting new opportunity for our students who are interested in pursuing skilled trades, and that's going to be one of the growth areas in jobs, so we need to prepare students for that. And finally, we want to make sure that students are being challenged their individual potential. So we want to raise the aspirations of our students. So when people think of like, where do the best students come from in Alabama, they don't necessarily think of Hoover. They think of Mountain Brook, maybe Homewood. And why don't they think of Hoover? The statistics show that our students are very capable, they achieve. And so we want our students to aspire to go beyond perhaps just in local state college, or to think about what are the best opportunities for them based on their abilities. So we want to raise their aspirations and have them think above what they might be normally thinking is their possible future path. Okay. So we look at the survey results that relate to student achievement. There are high levels of agreement that teaching practices are strong. A lot of the people agreed that they like the extracurricular activities, and that every student has some options for extracurricular activities that can appeal to them. And career academies were especially singled out, being varied and very relevant, and those would be for high school students. There was strong agreement about the quality and rigor of the curriculum and instruction, 85%. Assigning it 4 or 5 stars, but there was still concern mentioned about increasing the rigor and desiring more challenging work in the comments. So that is always, as I say, a work in progress, trying to find ways of developing programs that are particularly challenging for individual students, and then matching the students with those programs that are going to be particularly beneficial to them. Finally, the third aspect, 91% chose student-teacher ratios as being the most important priority. I think this reflects the fact that parents care greatly about the student-teacher interaction. Smaller class sizes do make it easier on the teachers to have really high-quality learning experiences. And then secondly, 72% ranked teacher quality as being highly important. So we want to recruit the best quality teachers, and we want to give them class sizes where it makes it as easy as possible to really have an excellent learning experience for our students. Moving on then to our belief statements. Our first statement is that students learn best when curriculum and instruction are built upon high expectations and best practices. So what we want to do is to set very high expectations, then provide the resources and the effective teaching to help the students achieve that level regardless of where they came into our classes. And this involves high quality professional development. And I was very excited to hear about this because actually student learning and teaching is kind of my research specialization. There's been a huge growth in research in this area in the last 20 years or so. And I was very excited to hear about how the Hoover City school system is trying to incorporate the latest high-quality research into developing teaching practices. Students learn in different ways and need a variety of challenging, engaging experiences. I've mentioned this before, that students come in with different levels of preparation, and the prior knowledge really has the most powerful impact on how easily you will learn new information. The more you know, the easier it is to learn. So we need to find ways of challenging and engaging all levels of prior knowledge. Okay. And then success of all students is shared responsibility of schools, parents, and the community. So we all need to do our share to help our students through partnerships, through finances, as we've heard before, and just simply through supporting our teachers in their everyday classroom experiences. So here are our recommendations. So high quality teacher training. We want to provide meaningful professional development. Hiring the best quality teachers is the beginning, not the end. So we want our teachers to develop and to grow in their mastery and expertise in teaching throughout their career. So that is incredibly important by providing them with the best professional development possible. We want them to not only know their content area, but know how students learn their content area. So a great deal about teaching experience is working with students and teaching them how to think about and understand and to learn different content areas. We want to be proactive in student support and safety nets. During the budget cuts, we lost some of our summer enrichment programs in the elementary schools, and we need to think about perhaps reinstating those, getting ahead of problems rather than chasing after them. That would be a great investment of our resources. We also want to engage more community resources, providing students with more internship opportunities, for example, having more opportunities where they might work with companies in the community, or people who are skilled craftsmen in the community, providing more and more of those kind of relevant work and learning experiences. Then finally, we want to provide relevant and robust resources to promote deep thinking. I talked about library collections, so we want the school to be as enriching, a stimulating learning environment as possible. We want to always find ways of increasing the expectations, the rigor. One thing that we discussed at length was considering IB expansion to all middle and high schools. And that would help probably our most highly motivated students, but it would also have ripple effect once we raise the standard to all students when they see what these other students are able to accomplish. So we always need to find those kinds of strategies to raise the overall levels and expectations of our students. So next we have technology.
Hello, my name is Travis Bryant, and I have two in the Hoover City School System in the elementary school. Past few weeks I've been working with the Technology Committee. Part of the conversations there, it was headed up with Brian Phillips. He did a really good job. This committee attracted the exact kind of expertise and IT geekdom you'd expect. I found myself more than once leaning back, listening to them geek out over all things Google and security, and so it was really good, and I learned a lot. It was a good committee. During those conversations, some points did keep cropping up. The first one is BYOD, which a lot of parents and the folks counting pennies want to know if students have iPads, Windows pads, Google pads, all at home, why can't they bring those and use those as their devices at school? The Technology Committee has in the past, and they've got a really good message, and it's just about getting it out there, about security. How does a teacher teach on more than one device in a class? How do you insulate the school infrastructure, not knowing what devices are going to walk in the door? Those kinds of things. It's a lot of smart people working on that, but it's not, I think somebody said, it's complicated. That's a good way to kind of sum that one up, that first point. Other things that kept coming up were the continued support from school board and community, just what's on the horizon, what's on the future, what will be supported, what's going to get cut, what can we count on, where do we invest, and just some of the stresses there. Increased utilization of technologies into the curriculum in all classrooms. Is there equity of devices across the schools within the classes? Are there opportunities being missed? How do those get addressed? What teachers are doing it right? They've got a really nifty program of where they have teacher ambassadors. Some of the folks at some of the schools who kind of pick it up quickly are bringing along fellow teachers and showing them how to best utilize some of these devices. And the learning management systems. For every student email and online whiteboard and greenboard and blackboard and online homework, and all, that's a different password, that's a different system, that's a different save, that's a different, and so how do you get all those with 7, 8 periods a day? How do you get all those teachers and students on the same page so you're not causing confusions and slowing things down and causing frustration at home with the homework? And so coming out of those conversations, you know, with the surveys, two really big points rose to the top very quickly. How important is the effective implementation of instructional technology to the success of your students? 90% of the parents, of the respondents, said it is important or very important. And it's important that we pick up on the effective implementation here. It was encouraging to hear the committee talk that they're not talking about replacing the pencil or the calculator or the marker or the chalk with a keyboard just because they can, right? They are looking for those opportunities to enhance the lesson, to enhance the opportunity there in the classroom with technology. And it's not just technology for technology's sake because it's new and shiny. The other one is, how important is it to you for your schools to have the latest technology available for students and teachers? 88% said it's very important. And again, it's the same kind of thinking there. So going with those survey results, the belief statement, technology alone does not transform learning, rather technology enables transformative learning. This is about creating opportunities in the classroom, creating opportunities for the students, creating opportunities for the teachers to do their jobs well. The technology is not the end goal. So it was kind of neat to watch we shared a lot of Google Docs and things like that as we were working through the past few weeks. And the end goal was always that student's opportunity and creating those things. And it wasn't just, okay, what's the new device we get to buy? What's the new security thing we need to be mindful of? How do we, what's the best way to address these things? So using the belief statement as a springboard, going into the recommendations, to kind of make that belief statement happen and realize within our schools. So increase opportunities for engaging, relevant, and personalized learning experiences that prepare students to be active participants in a global society. I heard somebody else mention global society as well. This is about diversity. This is about allowing students to pick their passions, to pick to see their challenges, and empowering the teacher to give them the right tool at the right time so that student can grow and can learn. Increase opportunities for utilizing technology to empower and inspire teachers to facilitate more effective and engaging instruction for all learners. This is about not forcing teachers to get bogged down in all the learning management systems, not forcing them to have to pay attention to the do's and don'ts in the classroom rather than do what they need to do to tend to their students. This is giving them the tools to collaborate down the hall or across the state or across the oceans. This is about training. This is about giving them the space in their classroom. One of the cool things, I saw a conversation in one of the Google Docs, was where they were talking about a teacher's position. They're uniquely positioned to model smart, ethical, technological behavior for the students. And as a parent, that's important to me. Realizing how much screen time they get, how many doors are now open to them, all that scary stuff that parents have to deal with now. The teachers are in a unique position. And the fact that the committee is paying attention to how do we empower that teacher? How do we give them that space to where they can model that behavior for their students? And then lastly, ensure the continued access to a safe and robust network through high-quality, low-cost devices for learning in and out of school. Technology is expensive. It's needed. It has to happen. If you have a phone, your phone was probably built to expire in 8 months, so they can force you to buy a new one. They're very aware of that. They've got some very smart solutions in place. I was impressed with what they're doing there. And I was so proud that the survey included some smart questions. And one of them specifically was in regards to access to the internet at home. These students come in. We have a great program of giving students Chromebooks, and there's online classes and online homework, and they file and take quizzes and have to do all this stuff. 350 respondents said they don't have adequate internet at home for these devices. So we're giving them, say, hey, here's your homework, and they get home and they can't do it, right? So, but talking to Brian, there have been programs in the past to where they reach out to parents, to communities, to neighborhoods, to educate, to help them overcome that. There are ways to overcome that, and it's not free internet. I mean, there are ways to overcome that. And it's just about communicating, about amplifying the message that the technology team has had in the past and answering some of these survey concerns. So I was excited and very happy and proud of the way the survey informed some of the concerns, some of the things that I wasn't aware of, and some of the solutions that they're going to look to put forward next year. Thank you. And next is unitary status.
All right. Unitary status. I'm Shelley Shaw. I have 2 students in Hoover City Schools. One's a senior at Spain Park, and one's a 6th grader at Berry. I guess what I'll do first is recognize our chairman. We had our chairman, Dr. Deborah Smith, and we appreciate you. We met 4 times. As you see, the committee was diverse, full of lots of different stakeholders in our community. We had parents, we had faculty, we had staff, just a variety of people that were able to contribute to our committee. Moving into our next slide, repeating conversations. Now, there are 6 green factors. Dr. Murphy has already spoken about that. But we did have 3 major topics that would come up regularly. The first one, committee members discussed new housing developments and the impact they will have on the student assignment plan. Next, committee members shared repeatedly the different ways that diversity is valued within the classroom and throughout the district. The committee discussed the need to strengthen our minority recruitment and retention plan. So again, some of these we've already touched on. We've heard a lot about the survey as well. I would say that we learned a lot ourselves about our population, the folks that took the time to take the survey. We appreciate that. There were 3 questions pertaining to unitary status. 33% of the respondents were not familiar at all with Hoover City Schools' efforts to achieve unitary status. Respondents believe that the district has shown the most progress in maintaining well-kept schools that are equitable regardless of the feeder pattern. So again, we've heard a little bit about that today, where our resources have been spent on our buildings, on our facilities. It is recognized by the community and that they like it. That's a good thing. Lastly, survey respondents believe the district has shown the least amount of progress in the equitable placement of diverse, qualified staff members. We looked at belief statements. So this is the 3 that we focused on in Unitary Status Committee. We welcome and value diversity in the classroom and throughout the system. Students learn in different ways and should be provided with a variety of challenging and engaging instructional approaches to support their learning. Learning is enhanced when the instruction is pre-planned, organized around specific learning outcomes, and aligned to the curriculum. Recommendations. Our committee was tasked with looking at all 6 of the green factors. And again, I've already spoken about that we kept coming back to 3 that were talked about quite regularly. But we did want to mention those again. We've got student assignment, faculty assignment, staff assignment, the facilities, transportation, and extracurricular activities. What our committee has recommended is that we do a self-assessment regarding each of these green factors, and that it would be a way to measure positive gains towards achieving unitary status in the next 3 to 5 years. These next bullets are somewhat embedded in that major recommendation there at the top. The district should review the student assignment plan in consideration of the new communities that are being built. The district should review the rule of grandfathering for siblings. The district should focus on minority recruiting and retention, again, another topic that was talked about tonight. Develop consistent hiring practices, develop a hiring committee. Our last bullet here, the district should create a mentoring program for novice teachers, utilizing a team instead of just one teacher, and then also utilize diversity coaching, possibly in a team environment as well. That's all I have for unitary status, and I will pass this off to whoever is wrapping up our program. Okay.
Thank you. I'm looking at Ron saying, Ron, aren't you going to wrap this up? Me saying no. So thank you. Wow. I hope that you can see lots of conversations and lots of time and energy have been invested in this process. I'm so grateful to each of those committees. Thank you for each of you who presented for us tonight. Thank you so much for doing that. There will be opportunities for you to give us feedback and to have conversations with us. So please know that that opportunity is forthcoming. And thank you for taking time out this evening to come to be in this building with us with all the other many things that you must have had that you could do this evening. I'm going to hang around. Perhaps you have some thoughts, some ideas, suggestions. We won't hang long because I know that they're trying to close up church here, but we'll hang out for just a little bit. And if you have a question that you want to pose to me or maybe to any of our other committee members who shared, perhaps they'll hang out a few minutes with me also. Thank you so much. Merry Christmas. God bless you.